make 25 grand. We'll sell it, we'll flip it, whatever you want to call it. We'll do a short-term flip, and we'll make money. I made a lot of people a lot of money that way. And anytime you make people money, they refer you, right? So it started steamrolling. But during that process, I was selling these properties to investors that had full-time jobs. They didn't know how to be landlords. And one of them in particular was our attorney. And I'm sitting at the closing table at Chicago Title, Arlington Heights, and he goes, "Mark, I need you to manage this property." I said, "Paul, man, I'm not in the management business anymore." He's like, "Mark, you can do this. I want you to handle it. I'm an attorney. I'm busy." I'm like, "Paul, you filed for eviction and gave me legal advice on the only rental property I ever managed." He goes, "Mark, you're right, but you learned all your lessons on your own dime. I don't got to worry about you doing that again." I said, "Paul, I don't even know how much to charge you." He's like, "I'll pay you $50 a month." I said, "Paul, you're an attorney. You're going to expect like a legal contract. Like I don't have it." He's like, "Mark, I'll draw something up. We'll make it fair, and you can use it for other people if you ever want to manage other people's properties." So to this day, he still has that property in our portfolio. We still manage for $50 as like an honorary. So he's like our first true management client. And we still use a modified version of his management agreement. And that's how we got into property management. But we did it as a means to an end. So in my mind that day, we took on a couple more properties after that, $100, for a couple more properties. And it was more of a means to the end to cover expenses as we wanted to grow this office. I don't even know what we were really going for at that time. Maybe it was brokerage, maybe it was, we wanted to get into commercial sales. But in my mind, I'm like, all right, his $50 will cover part of the electric bill. The next two properties came on, I'm like, oh, cool, we get a water cooler now. So I was managing properties to cover expenses in a way. And it wasn't until probably the market crash where, we started picking up properties left and right, where all of a sudden we had a couple hundred properties under management. And we're like, wow, we actually have a business here. So that's the long answer to your short question.
Wow, that's really interesting. So it really came from you guys were following the niche of like maybe converting to condos and all that stuff that was going on. And you actually got your real estate license when you first got started. So at this point in time, it's so interesting to see how you started like that in your early beginnings. And now you've gotten to a point where you really have a full service real estate business. And that was one of the things that, when Alex, April, and I were kind of looking at your profile, I mean, you really got to this point where now you have an arm that's responsible for acquisitions. You have an arm that's responsible for performing a rehab on some of these properties. You then go ahead, turn around and manage these properties. And you also have the ability to sell these properties to people who are looking for some of these turnkey assets. So how did you decide, and at what point did you decide that you wanted to expand into this full service real estate business? Or is this something that kind of happened organically over time?
Well, I think, early on, me and my partner, we were always, hustler is usually a negative word, but we were always hustling. And, we went where the money was. Not always for the right reasons, right? Not always for the highest, best time of our use, or use of our time. And, we found ourselves working again with these investors where we were like, all right, I'll find you the property. You find you a nice foreclosure, you buy it. Hey, listen, I'll fix it up for you. We'll make some money on the construction and we'll sell it for you. So we even before we really started investing ourselves, and along the time we were buying our own stuff and doing some stuff, but we really cut our teeth on the whole, call it fix and flip, or even the BRRRR concept, really doing it for other people, third party almost, from kind of turnkey type thing. And we did that, man, maybe 10, 20 times before the market crash. So that was almost like in training for what we went and did after the market crash. And, just offering those services and just being comfortable doing those things ultimately, and added it to like our menu of things that we're capable of doing for our clients.
Wow, that's really nice that you guys kind of had that opportunity to kind of test drive it a little bit before the market crash. Because I'm assuming once that market started recovering, you had to have kind of your systems and your teams that were in place to kind of support that level of scale moving forward from there, right? So I guess moving forward from there, how did you go about developing those type of systems and teams to get to the point where your business is today? And like, what do those systems and teams kind of look like for GC Realty Development?
Yeah, so when the market crashed, our company went, we kind of had two arms that really went fast, two different ways. And one was property management. And, we were adding, between accidental landlords of just Joe and Sue not being able to sell their house, but they got to move to California because the values were down, management grew there. Investors were starting to buy properties that we already had relationships with, so we're adding properties there. And on the management, and the other arm of that was hey, wow, we could buy stuff for $20,000 a unit, mostly in the south side of Chicago. And this is what cash flow is. and so that took off. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that, called the first 40 or 50 properties we did, we've had very low systems, but we had a lot we had the market on our side. We had a lot of room for error. When you're buying things for 20 grand and you're putting 20 grand into them and you're all in under 50, you had a margin of error. Even though things couldn't necessarily appraise out for it, those same properties now are 150,000 a unit, but we had some room to learn, and we did learn a lot on that. But the two went different ways, and it wasn't. I'll be very frank in the sense of I didn't really learn how to run businesses until probably after the market crash. We already been in business for about a decade, but truly understanding, the whole concept, if anyone on here might have read the books like E-Myth or Work the System, and really putting things into true process. And it was a moment. I remember this is one of those defining moments they had. My partner, Brian, goes, geez, Mark, it was a Friday afternoon and things were just going crazy. Usually Friday afternoons are supposed to be quieter and go into the weekend and we enjoy our weekend. But he's like, Mark, everyone's calling me. It's just nuts. It seems like balls are almost hitting the ground. I said, Brian, man, we manage 250 properties and 1 million square feet of commercial space, and we don't have a system in place. Like, we don't have anything. Like, everything is like just you and me, like figuring out as you go. And we started off the company almost both really the development and the management side of like a hub and spoke model where it's you have me and Brian in the middle, and we had 10 or 11 employees, but it all kind of flowed through us. So every decision had to flow through us to really get something. And it wasn't until we started hiring virtual assistants in the upcoming years and really trying to learn stuff about like E-Myth and delegation and delegation versus abdication. The E-Myth listeners there, that was a lesson learned hard. And you just learn those things and you start realizing, really how to train and what people need. Our training early on was, hey, go sit with him and you'll figure this out in about 6 months. And we always hired too late too. So we were hiring 6 months too late. We took 6 months to get people to speed. So we were always, but what that did ultimately, we always, as business owners, we always made sure the service was there. We always made sure our level of service was there. But what it did is it stunted our growth. And it also, it really just capped it, where if we didn't have the right people, or if I was stuck always trying to make sure the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted, and make sure these problems were hitting the floor, or make sure these things were getting cleaned up before they hit the floor, that was just not my highest and best use when I could be out there, doing things that are much more valuable hourly rate time stuff. So, but yeah, it ultimately stunted our growth in that sense. And there's a lot of lessons there. We could go down a lot of rabbit holes with those type of conversations.
Yeah, no, I totally like to kind of break that down a little bit more. I know, like, when I first started contacting you and I was asking you like, hey, I think I want to have you kind of manage this property. And you had actually suggested the various different types of technology that's available to us now that can help people who are just getting started, maybe living in one unit, renting out the other units, to kind of have that firsthand experience of property management ourselves before we go out and hire our own property manager, right? And so nowadays we have that type of technology available. And you had also mentioned the use of virtual assistants. So what types of technology and systems like that are available to the everyday investor that can leverage that to kind of help expand their business as well?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll tell you this, and my partners don't like when I say this, but it has purpose. I truly believe that everyone should manage their own property, except unless these two things are true. One, your time. If your time is worth, if you're literally like a doctor, you're worth you could make a couple $100 an hour, or maybe you have 3 kids and they're in the prime of their life and they got all these sports, and you'd rather that's a huge value of time, right? That's hard to put a price on. If your time is worth more than the call it $100 you might pay us a month per unit, then you hire a manager. But if not, if you're working a job you really don't like, you're really into real estate, you're all about learning more, then mess around with your stuff and to make sure you have good context. But the second reason you're gonna hire a property manager is distance. So if you're too far, out of state people, you could manage things from afar, but I think you do put yourself in a predicament that you have to not enforce things the way you'd like to enforce things if you were local. So, but yeah, as far as technologies go, I share with you a bunch of things. There's a lot of different things you can leverage as an investor, or even for us as a property manager. Our property management industry has changed drastically in the last decade just because of certain things like virtual assistants. There's virtual assistants you could call up there that again, you have to put some sort of process in place for them, and a lot of virtual assistants, I'm being very general in this, are very process oriented. But if you kind of have an idea what you're looking to do, or different escalation clauses as far as when things happen, or when they talk to a tenant and they say this, and you could have a virtual assistant help you with those type of things. There's also the there's various services that you can have as a call line. You know, you could handle all the leases and renewals and rent collection, but you could give them a 24-hour line to call, talk to a third party, and that third party could either reach out to you as a decision point, or you have your 2 or 3 true vendors on there that they can dispatch right away. So there's a lot, and you know, that might be a fraction. You're still going to pay for that service, but it may be a fraction of it. I call it kind of a hybrid version of self-management versus hiring a manager. So, but yeah, there's stuff like that. You know, then there's the tools of you know, the inspection that we use. This inspection, it's not a service, but inspection software that we use. Z Inspector, like that, I believe that's available to anybody, and that's just a very powerful tool that it has an app for tenants to do their own move-in, has do their own kind of move-in checklist. It gives you the property the chance to document things. So a lot of those tools are available to everyday people. It just takes time, right? And then you know, talk about the who versus how later on, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, you had mentioned an important word over there, and that's processes, right? So inevitably what ends up happening, and what it sounds like is happening, is you go from doing everything, every single aspect of your business yourself, or, you know, maybe you and a partner are handling everything at first, but eventually you kind of get to this point where you're more of taking a step back and you're managing other people, right? So one of the things that you had sent me when we were kind of planning this meetup over here today was the predictive index, which kind of blew my mind, right? And I know that you had mentioned that's kind of like a predictive index is like the disc profile on steroids, right? So how do you go about using that to find people to work for you, right? So like their virtual assistants and or your in-house employees.
Yeah, some people use DISC. Some people use, I think, Myers-Briggs, I think is another one. But you know, Culture Index or Predictive Index are pretty similar. It's a service. It's a survey you take that really it describes how you are in your natural climate. So you know how you really want to be, and how you think other people think you should be. So if your boss gave you the survey for a particular position, you know, you're going to have 2 different sets of kind of information. One, what you like to do, how comfortable you are with the detail, you know, just for example, the detail part of the work, and then what your boss expects you to be with the detail work. And usually when, you know, that's a big span in between those two kind of data points, that's something that you long term you might not be comfortable with that position. So you know, anybody that back to the e-myth book reference, you know, right seats on the bus, having the right people with the right seats. And you know, we realized a lot of times where, you know, over the years, you know, we've had at this point, you know, we have about 45 employees now. You know, we probably had 75 or so employees pass through in the last 2 decades. And a lot of the ones that were not, that didn't work out, we're not the right person for that position. I'll tell you this, for us as a growing company, and any small business owners out there could probably relate to this. I mentioned before, we always hired too late, right? And so we walked in the room and, hey, if we got along with them and they're cool and we could see ourselves having a beer Friday after work, they're hired, right? They might not be even the right person for the role, but they're able to kind of get through the interview. You know, I can see myself hanging out with them. They seem culturally, because I liked them, it seemed like a good fit. But that was the wrong way of hiring. That's totally the wrong way of hiring. And because we're always too late in hiring is a rushed process, which is a whole nother no. So I realized at one point, after we used Culture Index for a while, now we're using Predictive Index, but after about a year, I walked in the office and I wasn't so much in the day-to-day, but I walked in and there's all these people that weren't necessarily people. There were people I definitely did not hire, and probably people, if I was in a one-on-one interview, I probably wouldn't have hired them, just because culturally, you know, this person's not even that doesn't really talk. Like I would have probably I never would have seen them be able to fit in our culture. But that person is the perfect right person to handle our collections, because they're very like, listen, boom, 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 and they understand the process. So and the guy that I would have put in that position, guy or girl, would have got bored with the position because it's not adventurous enough, or it's too repetitive. And this survey, and I had you take it, you know, it's pretty darn accurate in that sense, and it helps us put the right people. You know, we, for each one of our job positions, virtual or local workers, we have kind of a chart of how it works. Now, even for our internal employees, our current employees, when we started using it, we all took it, and now we understand a little better how to communicate with people. It's like, all right, you're very low on I keep using details because it's an easy one. You're very low on details, so you know, and I know I'm going to have to make sure I follow up on your work, or or you're very high B, which, maybe you're more outward worried about, how people look at you. So maybe I got to say thank you a little more to you, or show a little more appreciation to you. So it helps us understand as a group, kind of each other. So, high A, low A, it's the people that just want to win. High A, they're always kind of going. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and anyone's ever interested in hearing more, I'm always happy to talk about it. I think it's a real cool system.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I got to admit, after I took that one, I felt pretty naked because I was like, oh man, if Mark read this, he pretty much knows exactly who I am and what kind of personality I have. That's kind of weird. All right. So I know you had mentioned the E-Myth a lot. Another book that you mentioned a lot, especially on the podcast, is that book, Who, Not How. And I think that goes hand in hand with the topic of this conversation. And why is that a book that you most frequently refer to other people? And what are some takeaways that you got from this book that helped you in your life or in your business?
So I think Who Not How ends up being a book, it just came out last October. Dan Sullivan wrote the book. My business partner, Cliff, is in strategic coach. That's what the group that Dan Sullivan, very high end mastery group. And this book, I think, well, if anyone hasn't read this on the call here, it needs to read it. I think this will be one of those timeless books that people will reference for years to come. And it's one of those books that I wish I would have had earlier on. Now, I'll tell you this, the advantages this decade versus last decade is just, there's so much more of this. When I first got into the business, internet speeds weren't even fast enough to have a meeting like this and make sure everything was streaming.
Yeah, very true.
They had it, but you had to have maybe a business type, upgraded type version. So I think the level of communication is so much more there. And if I would have started a decade earlier, I would have had those advantages. But I think the book, Who Not How, which is exactly what it is, it's really the concept. And any entrepreneur, any person looking to grow fast, or a lot of people will struggle to execute instead of figuring out how to do it, figure out the who that knows how to do it already. And I give this example for our podcast. We started our podcast, I think it was last January. Me and Tom said, boom, let's do it. And it took us about 8 or 9 weeks, 10 weeks to kind of figure out what we have to figure out and figure out how we got to do it. And at the end of that, call it 9, 10 weeks, we still didn't have it. We're anywhere close to doing it. I got on a call with somebody and he's like, oh man, just call this girl down in Florida. That's all she does, set up people for podcasts. Call her up, $850. We're on iTunes 2 weeks later. Like, wow. It's like, I wasted all that time. So that whole cost of what your time's worth, $850, split by me and Tom now, even when we're splitting it. So $425. And I already probably had 30 hours into it. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, like that's exactly right there. I should have spent 2 hours figuring out who could have set that up for me, finding that $850 service versus trying to figure out myself. And there's a lot of it. And it's hard. It's a battle for me. So I was, I catch myself all the time. This morning I was messing around with something on MailChimp trying to figure something out. And then I said, you know what, why am I doing this? And I copied and pasted what I was trying to do. I sent a quick video link to somebody in my office. And I said, I need your help on this. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. And she said back, I'll have it done by Monday afternoon. Again, like I would have wasted another 2 hours, started it open again tomorrow, and all for what? It was just more of just it becomes, sometimes for entrepreneurs, it becomes a challenge, and that's where you have to kind of make sure you're not you gotta make sure your ego is not getting in the way. That's another good book too, No Ego. If anyone's out there, if you haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic perspective. I'm kind of in a similar situation when it comes to developing a website too, because the same can be said for that, right? Like we open up a domain, you can kind of add WordPress to that and kind of fiddle around with that. And I'm looking at these things like, man, this is going to take me forever to put something like this together. And it's not going to look anywhere near what I actually want it to look like at the end too. And so I went on Upwork and somebody's charging, $300, $400, $500. And it's like, oh, and I could just give you the content that I want to put on there and you'll make it look nice and pretty. Oh, please save my time.
Places like Upwork, there's a couple other comparable places like that. Now there's places like Upwork, and then there's so many services now that provide virtual, they're almost virtual work coordinators, where you could find a real estate investment company that specializes in working with real estate investors, and then they help you manage them. So there's so many different variations of virtual help that you could get to be your who in a lot of stuff, and a lot of the detail work. So anyone that's out there doing flips and rehabs, and I know you're out there, and if you're not, you should be. You're tracking your receipts. You're trying to figure out. Literally, there's people that have CPAs, accounting degrees that are in Venezuela or in somewhere in Central America that will do that work for you for $10 an hour. Like and instead of you messing around with your, you literally take the picture, send it to them, let them track it in the spreadsheet. You might spend a little time setting up the way you want to track something, but let them do all the data entry for you. Let them coordinate, let them spit out the report, let them be the person that every Friday they send you the update of where you're at budget versus budget versus actual.
Absolutely. And then you can just focus on doing the important things in your business instead of doing the bookkeeping and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I kind of transitioning to that, right? So GC Realty Development, and I know we touched base on your podcast a couple different times throughout this chat right now, but most of the newer investors coming to the market today know you as one of the hosts on the Straight Up Chicago Investor podcast. So how did that idea kind of come about? And can you kind of touch base on that a little bit? And did you take any of the systems that you had discovered and implemented into GC Realty to help scale your Straight Up Chicago Investor podcasts a lot faster?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny how we came about the podcast idea. But I remember I was my business partner. He's been in GC Realty. I run the marketing, new business, and onboarding for new clients. Like those are my three departments. And my partner runs operations. He always tells me, he's like, you got to get. He sees these other guys around the country, these other property managers and investors run these big webinars, and I have webinars, these big like events, invite 100 people, you get 40 people to show, and do it every Saturday, every third Saturday of the month. And events kill me. Like, especially here in Chicago, you could spend 2 months with a team of people trying to coordinate it, or if you're doing it yourself, you spend a lot of time, you got to find your who on that. But you plan it, and then it snows, or it rains, or there's a power outage, and like then no one shows up. So the concept of doing that, all that effort's just always just killed me. So I was always on the hunt for kind of like, all right, how can I reach as many people as I can with information? Or, if anything, what we've really done at GC over the last handful of years is done everything we can to add value in our marketing, in our podcasts now. The whole, if anyone hasn't read this book, it's an awesome book. It's They Ask, You Answer. It's a marketing book, but it's all about content, building your website, and it's what people are asking. That's the blog you want to have. That's the article you want to have. That's the information you want to have about your management services. And it got me, and that whole concept is how we kind of built kind of our just the value we try to add to investors like everyone on this call here. But I was trying to figure that out, and I got a text from Tom Shalecross, and he said, "Hey man, we should do like a bunch of recordings on the 77 different communities." And I remember the exact intersection I was sitting at, and I was on the phone with somebody else. It was actually an attorney. I'm like, I gotta go. I call you back in an emergency. I'm on the phone with a guy, and I called Tom. I said, dude, I'm so in, but we can't do just the suburb. We can't do just the city. We got to do the suburbs as well too, because we got a lot of people span it. A lot of people want to learn more, and are based out in the suburbs. I said, I'm so down. And then that's, we had one phone call after that, and we got going. Now, as far as leveraging, I think one thing I've learned, we have very low marketing spend in GC for the amount of growth we've had, I guess, right? Anyone would think that's pretty cool that understands the numbers of growing a business, what you're supposed to spend versus what your revenue is. And a lot of that spend because we've really leveraged, other avenues of marketing. So we took our existing list of people we had, obviously we're managing for 400 people. We took that, times all the webinars we've done in the past, it's all sudden right away, you have a whole bunch of people. So really just leveraging the existing client and database that we had is huge. And I'll just say this to anybody, a great marketing guru, I hate the word guru, but a guru guy, Jay Abraham, he's all about that. He's all about taking, if you're looking to be out there and wholesaling, team up with the divorce attorney, not to get his list, but to send the postcards out and then split the costs. Or the attorney that's already sent those postcards out, have them put you on the corner as a wholesaler on the postcard and pay them a larger amount if you get a deal, maybe so you have nothing out front. So a lot of that leveraging of marketing is a huge piece. And we've been trying to allow, on the flip side, some of our sponsors and stuff like that, some of that leverage as well too, with using the audience. And we try to provide services that we think add value to everybody as well too.
Well, that's great, man. And honestly, I'm going to put a shameless plug in here for the GOB network, but I think that goes hand in hand with the type of mentality that we have with that network too. Is just being a go-giver, right? I mean, you were leveraging the people that you developed over the past few years, relationships with through all of your webinars and through helping other people. So just being able to do that and build up that type of base when you were able to get started with Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast, the amount of value that you brought other people was coming right back along to you. So I truly believe in that too.
That book, Go Giver, I read that for the first time about 3 months ago. That book is awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a great one. And that helped me really just kind of, just kind of move my mentality forward.
Nice, man. Well, I'll tell you what. So at this point in time, right, you have full service business, GC Realty Development. You run a straight up Chicago investor podcast. On a personal level, how do you do this and manage all your time? Like, how do you still manage to be present with family? How you still manage to just enjoy the things that you like to do in your life? What are you doing to kind of manage your time?
Well, it's ironic to say manage your time family because my son just walked in about 2 seconds ago and tried to tell me something about a game he's playing. I kind of kicked him out as mean. So I owe him an apology after this for putting work before him. But I have, I think trying to focus on the most important things I could do, which then forces you to find people to delegate stuff to, is probably one of the biggest things. So, every morning, one of the biggest things that I've been able to do the last few years is just wake up without an alarm. I think that's huge for, you have to get up early to make sure if you do sleep latest, it might be 5:30, right? So I get up every morning anywhere between 3:45 and 5:30. And I take those first few hours really focus time. I try not to check emails. So the minute I open Gmail, I'm done. So I try to get things done before I break open the email. And those things I try getting done are the things that are already kind of pre-planned for the week. And the beginning of the week, it's those 3 to 5 things that I have to get done. And if anyone hasn't read the book, Eat That Frog First, I think that's what it's called. But it's all about, if you eat the frog in the morning, then anything you do the rest of the day will be easy. So if you get that goal that you're trying to get done for that week, first thing in the morning, the rest of the day will be easy. And if you get nothing done the rest of the day, it doesn't matter. You got your big goal out of the way. Especially for me, after 10 o'clock, if it doesn't get done by 10 o'clock in the morning, it's not getting done. So, I do that. I try to get all the main priorities done in the first thing in the morning. And then, you tackle all the other challenges throughout the day. And then I'm off at 4:30. So one thing that I've cursed at my wife for, but yet I think in the end, I've been very blessed to have her force me to be off work every day at 4:30. So every day, 4:30, I got to turn it off. I'll go back and work later on sometimes after the kids are kind of winding down for bed or watching their cartoons. But I keep with that schedule. So.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you kind of said that too, because I can kind of relate in the sense that, my regular W-2 position is shift work, right? You go into work at a specified time, you're done at a specified time. And then by the time you get out of work, you can disconnect very easily. When it comes down to going down these avenues of entrepreneurship, there's always something to do. And the challenge is like, how do you get to the point where not only are you physically separating yourself from your business, but also mentally being able to check out of your business so that way you can be more present with the people that you're around,
As far as mentally checking out, that is tough. And, I'll get the pushback sometimes from the family or from more of the wife because she knows what it is. It's you're here, but you're not present, right?
Yeah.
But what really helps me is just putting the phone away. Man, I feel a sense if I leave the house without the phone. First, there's that panic, but then it feels good actually after a while. Like I don't have anything. Every so often your phone still vibrates, your leg still vibrates for some reason, but not a habit. But for me, leaving my phone at home, or now one thing I've learned to do is when I go to bed at night, my phone's in my office, so it's not even something that I can even touch first thing in the morning or in the middle of the night or whatnot. So.
No, that's a good point, putting that phone away, because there's a couple of times where we've been on a cruise, right, for vacation. And, oftentimes on cruises, when you're out at sea, you don't even have phone service too. And I feel like a lot of times those are the times where I'm most present because you actually don't have a phone to distract you from the present too.
I've done a couple 7 days, no phone, left my phone with my business partner and just said goodbye. And those are some of those are the best times. And I think I'm very guilty of wishing I did it more and don't do it often enough. So.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Mark. So you have given us a ton of value today. And just to take your own term, you've given us a ton of nuggets that are going to be very helpful to us in the future. So I really appreciate you being here. We're going to fire away 3 last questions for you before we go out into breakout sessions. All right.
You got fire around.
All right. So the first one's going to be, what's your 5-year vision for GC Realty and the Straight Up Chicago Investor podcast?
So Straight Up Chicago Investor podcast, our first goal is to get 50 episodes and revisit and see if people are even listening. And we've made that. So we get pretty good feedback, and it's been fun along the way. We've had a lot of people like Tony help us with stuff, and Alex and Aaron, that they've been huge parts of really growing this. So I can't even take even a small part of that credit when everyone else has done so much for it. But that's something that's good. Right now we're kind of just getting to the end of the year, and we're going to do the same thing, revisit it. I think the one thing I'll tell you this, when we started the podcast, for me, I was like, oh man, we're going to run out of people to talk to. That was very naive of me thinking, and very cocky of me thinking I knew everybody, which is awesome because I've learned so many people I don't know. I've met so many people, and then you meet so many people of those people, and it's just been a huge opportunity. And that has actually motivated me to want to keep finding new people. So I don't think we're going to run out of people anytime soon. I think and there's always going to be new topics that are going to be local to talk about. So I think we'll have a good run. But at the end of this year, we're going to revisit that and see what it looks like. Because, maybe me and Tom, they got to make sure Tom's on the same page too, right?
Yeah.
As far as GC goes, in 2018, we really stopped a lot of the rehabs we were doing. We're buying 30, 40, 50 units a year, rehabbing them. 2018, we really stopped that to grow GC Realty. And the GC at that point, after doing all those rehabs and trying to run numbers as investors, we realized how crucial property management was to the whole life cycle of an investment property. We said, you know what? There's not really an 8,000-pound gorilla in the property management space here in Chicago, and there's 1 million rental units. So there's a good opportunity here. And our time, back to where your times can be most get your best return from, maybe we have to grow a better machine. So that is just something we're just going to keep on focusing on growing and doing better, and not even necessarily growing and adding. A lot of management companies, measure growth by doors, and I think ours is turning into more of how can we add more services to the same people across the board. Whether it be insurance or getting master plan insurance for everybody, so we could all save 20% on insurance, whatever it might be. We're just looking for better ways to do some of that stuff there. And then, it's really hard to go 5 years down the road with any business, just because especially in our business, economy wise and real estate market wise. But I don't know. I think for property management as an industry, we are actually we grow when the economy's down. So even if something did shift, that's going to probably be opportunity. Because right now, property managers across the country, the biggest problem they have is people selling. It's like, oh, I'm up 200 grand, like I'm going to sell. It's like now that property manager lost the door. So there's a lot of attrition out the back door. So we'll see. As long as we can provide service and keep helping people the right way, I want to keep trying to grow that, touch more people.
Nice. Yeah, that's good insight too. And yeah, I agree. We do have a very interesting position over here in Chicago, in that we have like this abundance of like 2 to 4 units, just readily available over here compared to maybe some other markets that don't have as much of those available. To steal one from the podcast, what makes you successful when others just try to be?
So 2 things, I think. One, if anyone's gotten on the phone with me before or got an email, all I do is try to bombard you back with shit that you need to know. Sometimes people get mad. They're like, all I want to know is how much you charge for management. I'm like, no, man, you're buying this property in West Lawn or Woodlawn. You need to know about Section 8. You need to know about these 3 things. And you need to get an attorney here. Like, I have to cram stuff down people's throats sometimes. I was on a phone yesterday with somebody. They're buying a 4-flat in West Woodlawn. I'm like, you got to know these things. And I felt kind of like she was pushing back on like, I just want to know how much you charge. Like, so I do, I think one thing that we try to do is just give as much value to people we come across, me personally. And that, Chris, you and me became connected probably because I did that, right? I was able
Absolutely.
to get enough information to help you, and you're happy enough to refer me when you see the opportunity. And there's no better way to grow sales than having cheerleaders, lack of a better word, out there for you that you've helped, and now they're trying to return the favor. So that, I think, is huge. And our whole company operates like that. Just the whole concept of abundance. You put a whole bunch out there, and a whole bunch of good stuff will come back, I think. So, and I've always had that mindset in life. And I think back now, you reflect, I just turned 40 this year, but even when I was 17, 18, even younger, you always try making people money. You always try helping people. And I think back then it was more for acceptance. I want people to like you. But now it's like, all right, now I'm actually adding true value. But, and that's something that's kind of always, and I've really tried to leverage that. It's a strength, right? It's a superpower, I think, that we have as a company to try to just really help as many people as can, as best as we can. And then 2, I think one thing that's really helped my personal growth is just the reading, listening. So audiobooks, concept stuff. And I think for me, they say that you're the average of the 5 people that you're around the most. And for me, it's my family, but outside of my family, it ends up being people, my partners and books, and whoever's teaching me through these books. So, I always have an audiobook going at any given time. And I switch back between sales or growing a business or just kind of personal growth. And then I'll throw in some, yeah, I'm big on biographies and just look, I love to learn how other people went through life and what they learned through life. So
I love that. Yeah. And, speaking of the abundance mindset, we have Jim Biggs over here today that's with us, who was our guest last month talking about the abundance mindset. And we all completely agree that that's definitely the way to go, especially in a team-based business like real estate.
yeah.
All right. Last question. How can someone get in contact with you, and what are some of the different ways they can provide value to you?
So on the podcast side, what, I think one of the things that stimulates us to continue to do it is just growth of the podcast. So if everyone on this call has somebody that's in real estate that hasn't seen the podcast yet, please refer us. And then if you have good people that want to be guests that you think would be able to add value, again, if you know somebody that could add value to our listener base, refer them. On the management side, anyone that has two things on the management side, we're always looking for people looking to get in property management. So I sent a thing out to all the Chicago realtors yesterday about, we have W-2 positions if you know anybody realtor wise that's looking. But if you know anyone looking for property management, let me know. And if anyone on this call knows me, I play the long game. So if you're house hacking now, call me up. We'll talk about how you're what you need to know now. And Chris, anything you guys need now, because down the road you're either going to refer me or you're going to hire me, and that's kind of the goal. So anyone look for property management on the GC side?
Awesome. Well, all of us here over at Windy CRI would be happy to be your cheerleader moving forward. So thank you very much, Mark. All right. So we're going to go ahead and transition to breakout rooms. Mark, you're more than welcome to kind of join us on the breakout rooms. If not, thank you so much again for joining us today. We'll go ahead and start dividing everybody up. Looks like we have a lot of people here today. Actually, we have 19 participants. So we'll probably divide it up into like 4 or 5 breakout rooms over here.
I do have to go. I'll drop my email in the comments. Anyone can find me on there, Bigger Pockets. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks so much, Mark. Really appreciate it. Oh, you know what? Actually, 1 second here. If does anybody have any last minute questions before we go ahead and do that real quick? I know that Sean had posted something about
the contact for the podcast.
Oh, the vendor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll drop it in the chat right now, and then if you ever want an introduction, I'll make the introduction. She's awesome.
Awesome.
And she actually handles our ongoing editing as well. Like every week she edits the podcast and gets us, she sets you up on iTunes and does all that stuff.
Wow.
So, awesome. Anybody else have any questions before we let Mark go? All right. We're going to go ahead and divide everybody up into breakout sessions over here now. Mark, thanks again for joining us. Hope to keep in touch.
Awesome. Have a good weekend, guys. Bye.
I'll just say the same one. Yeah.
we go. Looks like we're in the main room. Wait on everybody else to kind of get out of their breakout rooms, and then start another one.
Great.
Mark, how was your meetup earlier this week, man? Sorry I wasn't able to make it.
Oh, no worries. It was very good actually. We had Kimra Holcomb. Sorry, I have my mask on. So we had Kimra come on to speak on asset management and divulge a lot of the secrets that she's that's been hidden from mom and pop guys like us. So it was very awesome. Learned a ton. I definitely I need to drop the recording on the GOB platform drive
Yeah.
for everyone who wants to watch it over.
No, that's awesome.
Hey, Mark, Jackie, Jim, Daryl.
Hey, April.
Guys,
How many people we have on here now? Is this everybody? This is 13?
13. But there, Alex is cheating. He's got like 4 people over there.
I know Alex got a party going on over there,
He's
man.
having a
What's
house
up, guys? Yeah.
Dana was just dropping getting ready to drop some really cool knowledge on us about how the housing stipend works for nurses.
Ooh, do it.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Dana. Hi,
Dana! What's up, homie?
how are you?
Good.
Sorry, I just told the guys in my room, I'm like, me and Chris are former coworkers.
Dana's
No,
living her
I
best
was
life
just-
now, though. She's
Yes,
out.
at least I'm trying, man. I'm trying. No, I was just explaining, they had just asked how the housing stipend works for us travelers. And I was like, yes, I get to get on my soapbox because I always try to promote to people if they have an extra apartment, an extra unit, or even an extra room to rent it out to travelers if it's not already rented out. But the stipend, or sorry, how we find our housing, I was just telling the guys, we have 2 options. Either take the company provided housing. The companies usually have units that are like almost like corporate leased. And we can have the agency set that up for us. It comes fully furnished. But we don't get that tax-free stipend for us, obviously, because the hospital's paying, I mean, not the hospital, the agency is paying for our living. Or to put more money in our pocket, we get that tax-free stipend and find housing ourselves. Most traveler nurses, the brave ones, will use Craigslist. Obviously, a lot of scammers there. Some people use Airbnb, but my tried and true and what I try to promote to people to use is furnishedfinders.com. Furnishedfinders.com is like Airbnb just for travelers. That's how I like to explain it. If you have an extra room, an extra apartment unit, whatever, extra house even, we usually, need it fully furnished because our assignments are usually only about 13 weeks. So most of us are not carrying around furniture, whatever. It's just our personal belongings. So you list it on Furnish Finder, just like Airbnb, with your pictures, your description, what have you, and you rent it out to a traveling nurse. Our assignments, like I said, 13 weeks. So, you're going to have a person there at least 3 months. If our assignment at the end of our contract, if they still need help, they want to extend, we want to stay, then we'll sign them for extra weeks, extra months even. The longest I personally stayed at a hospital was 8 months before I moved on. And yeah, it's, you still obviously make up an agreement, a tenant agreement. You take a deposit and we literally pay you, however you want to be paid, whether it be Venmo, cash, if you want to check, whatever. You work that out specifically with your traveler. So I push that website again. It's furnishedfinders.com. Everyone that uses that website is a traveler. So it's not just, random people out on the street. It's not just, whomever. You're getting a professional in there. Obviously, we're going to be able to pay because we're coming there for work. We're not going to tear up your stuff because we're either going to be at work or honestly on our days off, we're out exploring the area that we're in. So usually you don't have to worry about damages or anything like that. And usually every contract that I go on, I push Furnish Finders, and I've been able to convert people to, like I said, opening up that extra bedroom or what have you, and helping them, be able to get extra money in their pocket.
That is such a cool website. I've been trying to find a place to look for to like rent to travelers, and
Yeah.
this is a really cool website because you could list and you can search for, what your competition is doing. And
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually there's even travelers who have their home listed on that website, and while they're going on assignment, they're renting it out to someone else within that area as well.
that is so smart. Wow.
And I mean, you can still list it on, Airbnb, whatever, because maybe there'll be a period of time you won't have a traveler there, but at least you'll still be able to get some money somewhere else. But I try to push that, especially if you're in an area relatively close to a hospital, within 15, 20 minutes of a hospital. Especially with COVID, a lot of staffers left their permanent job to become travelers because the pay is, a little bit better than being a staffer. So a lot of hospitals nationwide need help, which means travelers are going to be used at most hospitals, probably even more so than before COVID. So if you're within a good, distance of a hospital, or just in a popular area, I'm pretty certain you would have success with that. So.
And this is it's based off of market rents, right? Like how they go about determining what your housing stipend is.
Correct. Yeah. We use
Do
the GSA.
do
So
people like frequently pay or are willing to pay more than what their housing stipend typically is? Or
I mean, I'm looking at the website right now, and it's pretty competitive, and if not higher than market rents, at least in our area. I mean,
Okay.
just because the lease is shorter, so I feel like it'd be a bit more of a premium. But I mean, and you're getting a vetted tenant, almost
yeah,
already vetted, which is kind of cool.
yeah. And some people, I mean, even, the ones that do charge a little bit more, I mean, you are providing, like I said, a fully furnished, fully stocked place. So, you have some grounds to ask for a little bit more money. We don't have to walk in with we pretty much show up with our clothes. So you have that kind of like almost quote unquote convenience fee in there, that you can, tap onto.
And if you can't find a traveler, you can switch it to an Airbnb and just see
Airbnb,
what it's
yeah,
working
and fill
out
in the
for.
gaps. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Just fill in the gaps.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Man, that's a super good point. Jim, after we had that conversation, actually, we started looking into other forms of like, housing that's similar to travel nursing. And another one too was called crash pads. Have you guys heard of crash pads before?
Hmm.
So one of the tenants so one of our units in this property is getting re-tenanted, and the tenants that are going to be in there are going to be 3 flight attendants.
Oh,
And flight attendants also have something similar to this, and it's referred to as a crash pad. And the extreme versions of these crash pads are they load up these bedrooms with like either bunk beds or like multiple twin size beds, and rent out by the bed per month and maximize your rents that way. And it can be done for a short-term plan or a longer-term plan, but that's kind of how they go about doing it. And I don't know if it's done as like a sublet. So for instance, like you have one resident flight attendant who lives in that place, and they're subletting it to other people who are just temporarily in the area or not. But that's also another option that could potentially be worth looking into, especially since these people are always out, in and out.
Mhm. Wow, that's so cool. And you can list your property for free. I'm looking at the crash pad website right now. It doesn't let you see the other listings, but for the free listing, but it looks like if you pay to list your property, I mean, there's like pricing plans. You can see what your competition is doing. I mean, and we're right by a major O'Hare hub, and then also Midway. So I
And
mean,
Midway.
it's crazy.
Yeah. So all of those are super helpful. And I wonder how often, these things are utilized. Because when we looked at them, there's actually a decent amount. And there's even like people who have branded their entire real estate business off of just catering to crash pads or catering to travel nurses or whatever specific profession that they're catering to. So I mean, there's definitely money in it. The other one's like residency programs too.
Mhm.
Because at least those people are there for like, at least a minimum of like 3 years or something.
yeah. Even on Furnish Finder, a lot of or some of the descriptions that I see for some places, they openly advertise it to med students. Once again, if you're near like especially a big teaching hospital,
Mhm.
med students, nursing students. yeah, anybody.
Yeah. Where I'm seeing that play actually be made, at least in the Chicagoland area, is in South Shore. Yeah, there's definitely good properties to be purchased in South Shore. And while it's not a fully gentrified area quite yet, it's close enough to these academic centers like U of C or Christ or something like that, that people can, just cater to either residents or travel nurses, and
Yep.
they're getting their units rented by those. So
Northwestern, I know for sure uses travelers. I know tons of travelers up there right now. So that area too. I know that's a little bit further south, but still.
yeah. Yeah. And are there like, is there like a point person? So like, you yourself as a travel nurse, right? Like you go to an agency and then the recruiter is the one who kind of arranges all these contracts for you, right?
Yeah.
So
The
then like,
recruiter and
is there
a
like a point
credentialing
person?
that helps get us our paperwork and stuff. It's mainly paperwork and stuff through them.
Do they have like preferred, like, do they give you guys housing providers then? Like you were mentioning something about that, right? Like,
Well, so like I said, if you take the company provided housing, you
okay.
don't get that stipend, like you don't get that money because obviously they're paying for it. But no, you don't have to talk to a landlord or anybody. They set everything up. It's already paid for up front. They usually just send us the address and the apartment number or whatever it is, and we just go there and it's all set up.
Gotcha.
Dana, do you have any idea how what percentage of the nurses actually take that option as opposed to finding their own?
Actual number, no, but it's very small, a very small percentage, because people want that extra dollar in their pocket. Because regardless of what the rent is for, like, say I find an apartment wherever for $100. Let's say in California, I know that does not exist, an apartment for $100 in California, but let's say I found an apartment for $100 in California. Like I just told you, I can easily get $3,500 a month in housing stipend for California. That extra money, that 3,500 minus 800, that's going into my pocket.
And
So
that's
people
tax free.
then that's tax free.
Oh, wow.
So people want that extra money. Like if you can, find a housing where the rent is lower than what the company is giving you, that's just extra tax-free money in your pocket. So a lot of people go for that. Some people, especially beginners, they will use the company provided housing. Once again, like I said, I did for my first 3 because I went way across the country by myself. And I figured if everything falls through, at least I have a roof over my head. But like I said, I only did it for 3 assignments and kind of jumped out on my own. But most travelers don't use it. I don't, like I said, I don't know the exact number, but it's a very small percentage.
Do you find that that most of them would prefer to rent a room, or do you find that you'll team up with 3 or 4 and rent a house?
There's definitely travelers that travel together, whether it be 2, 3, 4, and yeah, those will be the ones that will probably look for a house that are like 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. Most of us single or 2, travelers together will just look for an apartment. I know for a while pre-COVID, actually all the places that I rented, I just asked for a room, especially once again, being in California, it's a lot more expensive there. So I would rent rooms for $700, $800, $900 a month. During COVID and, with me working in critical care areas, I'm in COVID all the time. Just for safety, I started finding my own place and paying that extra money. Just, I don't want to bring anything to someone's home, and I don't want somebody in the home who's not, being as diligent as I am giving something to me. So I've personally have been seeking out single, like, whole apartments for myself, or at least a studio or something like that. But yeah, definitely travelers, the group travels in groups together, and they will definitely look for homes for sure. But I mean, there's even some single people out there too. They just like their space. It's all based on what they want. I actually do know a girl. She rents out 2-bedroom homes for herself, though. It's just a matter of what you want and what you're willing to pay for.
I know one of my buddies, when he traveled out to California, he did the complete opposite. Like there was a house that was available for rent, and I think it was through Airbnb, but he was renting out a single room within that like 4 or 5 bedroom house, and then probably pocketing, the remaining difference from the rents.
Yeah. No, that's what I said. That's what I did when I first started finding places on my own. Yeah, I only asked for rooms. Like I said, it was people, they just had a spare bedroom. I mean, you still have access to the rest of the house. You still use the kitchen, you still use the washer and dryer, what have you. You obviously just clean up after yourself. But like I said, just since COVID, I just personally chose to get my own space.
Nice.
But Daryl, I was just talking about you to Raymond about I love the speech that you give before your meetups, the abundance mindset, and that we're not here to compete with each other. Can you give us a little snippet of that, just so that we can all hear it? Because I feel like it's such a good thing to hear every single time we're here with other investors.
Well, basically, it's just we're not about competing in the GOB. If you're going to be a part of the GOB, then it's about what I could give you, but also in return, what can you give me? I've had people ask, how much does it cost to be a GOB member? And I stole something from Jim Biggs. Jim Biggs said, it may not cost you nothing financially, but it is going to cost you your time, and it's going to cost you to give back to those that need it. Mm-hmm. So with that philosophy, and I truly believe with all my heart that we can work together as one to take down a big deal. If I'm in Texas, and Texas is the market that I love and I'm looking into. So if I'm in Texas and one of you are in Texas, and 9 times out of 10, if we have the same criteria, we're dealing with the same brokers. Okay, we're getting the same exact listings. But instead of me competing against you, why not you and I work together to take this thing down? Mm-hmm. So, and I believe in it. I believe in that with all my heart, that it could be done. And maybe that's because of my military background, and also because I'm a nurse too. Okay, so as nurses, we work together, and the military had to work together. I think maybe because of all of that, you know.
That's so awesome. It's so inspiring. Thanks, Daryl.
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Absolutely. I mean, I think the nature of the GOB network, Jim, first off, I can't thank you enough for putting that whole thing together, because the amount of people that share that same type of mindset that gets brought together all across the entire nation. We got Mark Caesar over here from New York City. Daryl, where are you again? You're in Jersey, right?
Yeah, I'm in South Jersey.
You're in Jersey, and then Vinky's over in, Bay Area, just completely opposite of where you guys are. I mean, I think it really helps give us an opportunity to expand our network outside of just our home base,
yeah,
where the opportunities really are. So, no, it's great.
One of the nice side effects of COVID.
Yeah.
Zoom calls.
I know we're going to have to make a pretty tough decision once these things start opening back up, right?
So that's another great discussion to have, is how are we going to integrate in person and virtual? Mm-hmm. And I think that you guys have a lot of that already possibly figured out, because your venue, if you're going to continue at that venue, I think we had already had a discussion that you have the availability there of some screens.
Yeah.
And if you've, my ideal event venue, there's a place in DFW, and I'm not going to remember the name of the place, but it's a sports bar that has like stadium size screens, has 2 of those around this, just the biggest bar I've ever seen in my life. And there's one facing each direction. And then at every table, there's a 40-inch or 48-inch TV screen at every single